The blast door buckled inward with a screech of metal that made my teeth ache. I pressed myself against the maintenance shaft wall, wrench still clutched in my oil-slicked hand, and watched two small figures tumble through the gap in a tangle of silver limbs and panicked breathing. They couldn't have been more than children, twins by the look of them, identical down to the bioluminescent markings pulsing erratic purple along their necks. Their enormous eyes found me in the darkness, pupils dilating with terror, and the smaller one grabbed my jumpsuit with 4 delicate fingers. "Please," she whispered in accented standard. "They're coming." The heavy footfalls echoing through the station corridor answered before I could ask who. I yanked them deeper into the shaft, killed my headlamp, and sealed the access panel just as armed figures stormed past. Through the grating I glimpsed burnished armor and weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. Royal Guard. I'd seen their kind on the news feeds, but never this far out in the rim stations. Never hunting. The twin still gripping my suit was shaking. Her brother stood rigid beside her, one hand hovering over what looked like a small device clipped to his belt. Neither wore armor or weapons, just simple gray tunics that seemed too fine for the rust bucket station where I'd been fixing air scrubbers for the past 8 months. The girl's markings had shifted from purple to a sickly yellow-green. "Breathe," I told her, keeping my voice low. Slowly. "They've passed. They'll come back," the boy said. His markings stayed cold blue. "They always come back. We need to reach the docking ring before..." A proximity alert chirped from my tool belt. Someone had activated the station's internal scanners. I swore under my breath and started moving, gesturing for them to follow through the maintenance network I'd mapped over months of solitary work. The twins moved with surprising grace despite their fear, adapting quickly to the cramped passages and sudden drops. We crawled past humming power conduits and through spaces meant only for repair drones until we reached a junction near the residential pods. I paused, listening. Nothing but the station's mechanical heartbeat. "Who are you running from?" I asked. The girl's markings flickered. "Our mother." That made me look twice. Royal Guard didn't chase rebellious children through space stations. They protected empires, guarded bloodlines, enforced laws that kept entire systems in line. Unless... Your mother sent the Guard? Our mother commands them. She commands everything. My stomach went cold. I'd heard stories about the Genvar matriarchy, about their queen who'd unified 12 warring houses through strategy and ruthlessness, about her twin heirs who'd vanished 3 months ago, sparking rumors of assassination, rebellion, betrayal. I was looking at those heirs. In my maintenance shaft, bleeding bioluminescent terror into the recycled air. "Why run?" I managed. "Because she's choosing," the girl said. "One of us will inherit. One of us will be erased from history. She's bringing us home to decide." The device on the boy's belt chirped once. He glanced down and his markings went ice-white. "They've sealed the docking ring. All private vessels grounded." I thought fast. There was one ship that wouldn't show on official manifests, a smuggler's yacht that docked every 6 days like clockwork, buying black market parts and asking no questions. But they'd left yesterday. The next ship would come in 5 days if I was lucky, and the Guard would tear the station apart in 5 hours. "There's a cargo pod," I said. "Medical supplies heading out system tonight." "Automated route. If we can get you inside..." "They'll scan it," the boy interrupted. "Full spectrum. If we're aboard..." "Not if you're in a cryopod." I was already moving, plotting the route through my mental map of the station's guts. Medical transport carries emergency suspension units. Biosigns go dormant. Scans read it as equipment, not passengers. The girl's markings shifted to cautious orange. "You'd help us?" I'd spent 8 months alone on the station, fixing pipes and scrubbers for people who barely saw me, saving credits for a ticket anywhere else. I'd watched the news feeds showing the matriarchy's expansion, their efficient conquest wrapped in diplomatic language. I'd wondered what it was like to matter enough that someone would hunt you across the stars. Now I was looking at 2 kids who mattered so much their mother was willing to erase one of them. "Yeah," I said, "I'll help, but we move now." We climbed through the station's skeleton while somewhere above us, the Guard systematically cleared levels. I counted our chances with every meter. The cargo pod was in Bay 7, the cryo units were in medical storage on Deck 3, and between us and both destinations were corridors, checkpoints, and cameras I'd need to blind without triggering lockdown protocols. The twins stayed close, their markings gradually settling to a determined amber as we moved. When we reached the vent overlooking medical storage, I saw our first problem. 2 guards stood outside, alert and armored. The second problem was visible through the storage window. Only one cryopod remained, its status light blinking green for ready. One pod. 2 twins. I looked at them both. We flip for it, the boy said quietly. His sister's markings flashed bright. Don't be stupid. We both go, or neither goes. A cargo container? I said both or neither, Cale. I'd seen siblings argue before, but never with this weight behind it. Never with the knowledge that their mother, a queen who commanded fleets, had already decided one of them was expendable. The girl's hand found her brother's, their markings synchronizing to the same steady blue. There might be another way, I said, mind racing through possibilities. The pod could fit both if they stayed in close contact, if their combined mass didn't exceed safety parameters, if the suspension field could be recalibrated. It was dangerous and probably illegal and completely insane. Show me, the girl said. I crawled through the vent, dropped into the storage room's back section, and started pulling up the cryopod's technical specs on my handheld. The twins waited in tense silence while I ran calculations that would have made the manufacturer scream. Theoretically possible, practically suicidal. But the alternative was letting the guard find them, and something in the way these kids looked at each other, not competition, not rivals, just siblings determined to survive together, made the choice for me. It'll work, I lied. But it's going to be uncomfortable, and I can't guarantee the suspension will hold for both of you evenly. Cale's markings flickered with something like respect. You're a terrible liar. Thank you. His sister squeezed his hand tighter. What do we need to do? I explained while reconfiguring the pod's settings and praying I wouldn't accidentally kill them both. They'd have to maintain physical contact throughout suspension. Their biosigs would overlap enough that scanners might read them as a single entity, and if anything went wrong during transit, they'd wake up in deep space with no way to call for help. They listened without interrupting, and when I finished, they climbed into the pod without hesitation. Wait, the girl said as I reached for the activation switch. What's your name? Maintenance tech. Nobody important. She smiled, markings brightening. I'm Lyra. This is Cale. And Marcus Chen, if we survive this, you're going to be very important to us. I activated the pod before I could think too hard about what that meant. The suspension field wrapped around them both, their forms blurring as cellular processes slowed to near stasis. The biosig monitor hiccuped once, twice, then settled on readings that could theoretically belong to a single occupant. Good enough. Getting the pod to Bay 7 required a maintenance dolly, forged authorization codes, and sheer audacity. I moved through corridors with the confidence of someone who belonged, nodding at the few station workers I passed, keeping my breathing steady when I rolled past 2 guard members who barely glanced at the medical equipment. The cargo pod waited in Bay 7 like promised, its automated systems already counting down to departure. I loaded the cryopod into the medical supply section, secured it properly, and double-checked the routing. Destination: Outpost Meridian, a neutral station 12 jumps away. The twins would arrive in 18 days, wake up among strangers, and figure out what to do next. Without me. Without their mother's shadow overhead. I'd just sealed the cargo pod when I heard the voice behind me. Step away from the transport. The woman who'd spoken wore no armor, carried no visible weapons. She didn't need them. Her presence filled the loading bay like a physical force, and the silver markings along her neck and temples blazed with cold authority. Behind her stood 6 royal guard, perfectly still, weapons ready but not raised, waiting for orders. The queen herself had come. I recognized her from the news feeds, but footage hadn't captured the way she moved, fluid and precise, every gesture economical and absolute. Her eyes held the weight of systems governed and wars won. She looked at the cargo pod, at me, at the registration codes I'd hastily entered into the manifest system. Medical supplies, she said, voice calm as still water. Interesting cargo for a maintenance technician to handle personally. Just doing my job, ma'am. Making sure everything's secure for transit. I could feel sweat sliding down my spine despite the station's regulated temperature. One word from her and the guard would tear that cargo pod apart. One gesture and my life ended. Instead, she glanced at one of her guards. Scan it. The guard moved forward with a handheld scanner, the same full-spectrum device that should reveal 2 royal heirs sleeping in a pod designed for one. I didn't run. Couldn't run. Just stood there and watched my terrible plan collapse. The scanner passed over the cargo pod once, twice. The guard frowned, adjusted settings, scanned again, then looked at his queen. Medical supplies, Your Majesty. Cryopreserved pharmaceuticals, emergency equipment. One suspension unit reading as dormant cargo, all within standard parameters. Didn't breathe differently or blink or do anything that might signal relief. The Queen's eyes stayed on mine.
"When does it launch?" she asked. 17 minutes, ma'am.
And you personally verified all contents? Yes, ma'am. Another silence. The guard stood motionless. The Queen's markings had gone completely silver, unreadable. Then she turned to her guards with a gesture I couldn't interpret, and they withdrew to positions outside the bay. She remained, studying the cargo pod like it held secrets written in languages only she could read. "My children," she said quietly, not looking at me, "are resourceful, clever. But young. They don't yet understand that some choices must be made." My heart hammered. She knew.
Of course she knew. They believe I intend to erase one of them.
She finally looked at me, and her expression carried something I hadn't expected. Exhaustion. They're correct, but not in the way they fear. I said nothing. What could I say to a queen who commanded armies? "Our tradition demands a single heir," she continued. "One ruler, one voice. It has kept us strong for 10 generations, but it has also cost us much." Her markings flickered with something that might have been grief. I spent 3 months searching for them. Pulling resources from border conflicts, disrupting trade routes, showing weakness to rivals, all to bring them home for a choosing that shouldn't exist. The cargo pod's departure timer ticked down. 14 minutes. "You're going to let them go," I said, and it wasn't a question. "I'm going to let you make a choice," the Queen replied. "Keep your silence, and that transport leaves on schedule. The manifest will remain unaltered. My children will reach Meridian and disappear into the rim where my authority weakens." She paused. "Or speak truthfully now and face consequences for harboring royal heirs. Your decision." I looked at her, really looked, and saw not the conqueror from the news feeds, but something more complicated. A mother who'd sent hunters after her children knowing they'd run. A ruler bound by traditions she could break with a word but didn't. "I'm just maintenance," I said carefully. "I fix what's broken. Sometimes that means air scrubbers. Sometimes it means routing cargo where it needs to go." Her markings shifted to deep blue. "Sometimes," she said, "it means fixing systems that have been broken for generations." She turned and walked toward the bay exit, her guard falling into formation around her. At the threshold she paused. "Marcus Chen. The matriarchy has a long memory. We pay our debts and honor those who show us unexpected truths." Her voice carried the weight of absolutes. "If my children survive this journey, you'll be offered a position in their court when they're ready to build one. Refuse if you wish. But know that you've changed more than you understand tonight." Then she was gone and I was alone with a cargo pod containing 2 royal heirs, and 11 minutes until departure. I activated the launch sequence, watched the automated systems engage, and felt the whole station shudder slightly as the transport ejected into the black. The Queen and her guard left the station 3 hours later. I returned to my maintenance duties, fixing air scrubbers in corridors that suddenly felt less empty. 6 months passed. Then a message arrived on an encrypted channel I didn't recognize, containing coordinates for Outpost Meridian and a simple phrase in Lyra's handwriting. "Come meet your court." I stared at that message for a long time, thinking about twins who'd trusted a stranger, a queen who'd chosen truth over tradition, and the way a single night could rewrite the future of systems I'd never see. Then I bought a ticket, packed my tools, and headed for the rim where 2 royal heirs were building something new. Behind me, the station's air scrubbers hummed on, fixed and functional, one small repair and an empire learning to heal itself.